Okay, hello and welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I'm the actor.
My name is Josh Knapp. I'm the broadcast engineer.
Here we go. I got a little voice thing going on, a little sinus thing. Did you hear my voice kind of crack a little bit?
Well, my voice is bad too, so it'll be a feast for the ears this week because
It's like we're just going through puberty. Hi, welcome.
I'm just gonna try not to slobber all over the microphone because I've been like draining today. So, but
Notes to self. Thank goodness we're in two different states.
there we go.
Just saying.
Yeah, it's better for both of us. So, well, today we're going to talk about Jeremy Saulnier's new movie, Hold the Dark. But before that, I did want to bring up, I'm going to see a movie tomorrow night at Alamo Drafthouse. It's an advanced screening of Jonah Hill's Mid-90s. And after the movie, they're doing a Q&A with Jonah Hill. I think it's going to be, I think it's going to be in LA, and then they're gonna satellite downlink it. It's just for Alamo Drafthouses. So I think there's a draft house in LA. But wherever he's going to be at an Alamo Drafthouse, and they're going to, record it, or they're going to, do a live broadcast of it just to people in these screenings. So I've never done one of these before. I've been excited about these before. They've had a few since the Alamo opened up here in Raleigh, but just scheduling hasn't worked out. So I'm really excited for this one because it'll be interesting. Just the whole Q&A part of it, and then seeing the movie early will be cool too. Because I've heard things from people who've seen it at. I don't really know too much about it really. I just know it's like kind of like mid-90s kid is kind of a latchkey kid, or is just kind of like somebody he's trying to grow figure out how to grow up and fit himself into the social, society and all that stuff as a kid. And I think Lucas Hedges is in it too, so he's in everything this year again. So that'll be interesting. I don't think Jonah Hill's in it, but I'm not sure. I've tried to not know much about the movie, so it'll be interesting.
Yeah, well, jealous on so many different levels. Now, after the Q&A starts, are you allowed to, I guess you're not allowed to bring out your phone and record that.
Yeah, I don't think they want you to do that. I've never been to one of these before, but I think that they'll probably do a little spiel before the movie starts, or maybe between the movie and when the Q&A starts, because they're gonna not want that to be, because I haven't done a lot of, digging on YouTube or whatever to see if these things are on YouTube or not, but I don't think that they are, widely disseminated, because they want these things to be special for the people who, spent the money and the time and the energy to get there for these particular screenings. And they want them to be, different and value added, because it's like, oh, well, I'm not going to go to that screening because tomorrow it'll be uploaded to YouTube. I might as well just watch it then. So I think they want something that's a little bit more, more special for the people who are there. So it'll be neat. There's all kinds of screenings I'm just not even going to be able to go to. They're doing like a special screening of the new Suspiria on Halloween night, but I can't go to that.
Oh, fun.
I know that's like 3 days before it comes out or whatever, but I can't go to that. And then there's, I think there was Halloween. I think they're playing Halloween in a couple days or something. The 40th,
the new version or the old one?
The original one. I think is it the 40th?
Oh, cool.
Anniversary? I think it is. 78. I think that's when it came out. But anyway, so they're doing all kinds of crazy stuff. Anyway, so I know you've seen a bunch of movies, and I have too, and we're gonna get to all the big movies that have come out, recently, and we're gonna do 1978. That is when it came out. So we're gonna go through, and we're gonna do episode on A Star Is Born and First Man possibly. So we'll see. But today we're gonna talk about Jeremy Saulnier's new movie that was released on Netflix called Hold the Dark. So based on a book. Screenplay was written by Macon Blair. I think this is the first movie that Jeremy Saulnier has not written and directed, although obviously his buddy Macon Blair has been a huge influence in his career too. He was the star of Blue Ruin, which we talked about. Green Room was like my favorite movie of that year. So, I'm a huge Jeremy Saulnier fan, and so I was really excited about this. And it stars Jeffrey Wright, Alexander Skarsgård, Riley Keough, and James Badge Dale, along with some other great actors, but maybe not as big a names, but still, I thought really good performances. So, what were you thinking about when when I asked if we could do a podcast on this one.
No, I was interested. We had talked about it before, and I'm interested in it. I'm interested in anything that this director does. Macon Blair, he's interesting.
Well, he's the screenwriter.
Especially, right, exactly. But as a screenwriter, you're right. I just clipped those two. So I'm interested in Jeremy Saulnier as a director. I'm interested in Macon Blair as a screenwriter. I'm interested in Jeffrey Wright being the lead character in a movie. I'm interested in Riley Keough once again showing up and me not recognizing her for like 15 minutes.
Yep.
And she's only in like 10 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
I can't. I'm going to stress that over and over again. I cannot get over how different she is in all movies that she does. I literally did not recognize her until something made me go, "Oh wait, isn't Riley Keough in this? Oh wait, is that her?" I was like, "How did she do that again?" So yeah, I'm interested in it. I'm glad we watched it. I have a lot of good things to say about it, but I have a lot of questions too.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you want to go?
Well,
where do you want to begin, Josh?
I think that the big thing for me is that I was wondering what Jeremy Saulnier was going to do to kind of like push himself, and how he was going to make this a little bit more interesting for himself and difficult for himself. But at the same time, is he going to have like after seeing and I have seen Murder Party, his like first feature-length film since we saw Green Room. So seeing all the feature-length films he's done so far, I wanted to see if there is a pattern that can be established after this will be his fourth. And I do feel like he does have like a look and a feel to his movies. A lot of it has to do with I'm somewhat subject matter, but a lot of it is like, kind of a foreboding that is bolstered by the lighting and by somewhat the score too, but mainly like the shots that he chooses, and I thought that was good that he is kind of like his own director, which I think is really awesome. He's not just like I don't think he's really trying to copy anybody. So I thought that was really cool. And he now gets to play with he got Patrick Stewart in Green Room that he got to play with, and he gets to play with some other actors, Jeffrey Wright being one of them, and Jeffrey Wright being the main character. And I've had like a thing about Jeffrey Wright. I don't even know if I've talked about this, but like, yeah, I know. And I think it might have started with Casino Royale. He plays Felix Leiter, the American agent, and he just seemed too like, I don't know, self-important or something. It seemed weird, and it seemed like I could see the acting, and that was rough for me. And I've seen him in a few other things, but I think it started kind of with maybe his character, how his character was in and what his character had to do in Westworld, and then with this movie, it's all kind of gone away. Like I don't have any real issues with him right now or anymore, I guess. But he was in Hunger Games, like I think second, third, fourth, however many there are.
Second one.
Yeah, he was in a bunch of them. I think he was in Mockingjay too. But he was in Ides of March. I'm just looking back on some of the stuff that he's done, and yeah, I just got this feeling out of him from those performances. But seeing him in Westworld and seeing him in this, like it's all he seems effortless in his acting, and I don't see the seams in this performance. So I don't see him trying to act in this performance, which is a compliment. But yeah, I'm on team Jeffrey Wright now, so that's good.
Wow, you've been won over. That's a little bit different for you. Normally, you get not stuck. You have your opinion and you stick to it, and that's okay. Jeffrey Wright is a Tony Award winner. He's an Emmy Award winner, and he was just nominated again for Westworld, which I think he's brilliant in. The first thing I ever saw him in that I actually put his name to his face, I mean, I remember seeing him for quite a few years now, but the first thing I ever saw that I put his name to was Mike Nichols' Angels in America. He plays the same role he did on Broadway, and I think he won the Emmy for that performance as well as the Tony. Don't quote me on that. I'm pretty sure he won the Tony for that, but so he plays a very effeminate gay man in Angels in America. So when I saw him, I saw him in something I had seen before and kind of recognized him by face, but I had a really hard time because I was like, does he have a twin brother who's gay? Like, I couldn't put the two together. And, you know, there are certain qualities and certain stereotypes that you have to be careful about playing. But so he holds that performance in Angels in America very tight, almost close to his chest, if you will, and he pulls it off. He is very, very different than everything else that you've seen him do. He still has that kind of quiet whisper thing that he does, but it's intentional in everything that he does. So to actually, if you were to watch Angels in America and then watch Westworld, it's the same but different. He has this quality about him, and there's a theory that the character becomes you, and I'm not sure if you're supposed to become the character or the character is supposed to become you, but I believe the theory is that the character becomes you. You find your way through the character by allowing the character to go through you, if that makes sense. And he has a way of doing that, and that breeds believability for me. So I'm all about him. I like him a lot. I always have. I was happy to see him in a lead role. And it makes sense. It makes sense that Macon Blair would write a role with him in mind, or cast him in a movie like this, or Jeremy Saulnier, whoever came up with the casting decision, probably the casting director, and then all those people we just talked about. So it's nice to see the fact that a director, and he seems to do that, he seems to cast people as leads that you would not necessarily expect for people to be the lead in a movie. Macon Blair being one of them, Blue Ruin, and Anton Yelchin. Yeah, he's not your atypical lead. He could have very easily developed into a lead actor, but he hadn't been at that point. So to put him in that role is always interesting. It's like putting Michael Shannon in a lead role. He's a supporting character by nature, by his quirky nature. But when he's in the lead, he can hold it down. And I think Jeffrey Wright does a really great job in this. And technically speaking, Alexander Skarsgård is the lead too once his character shows up in the movie. I mean, it's pretty much toe-to-toe. Yeah. And you can't go wrong with him. You just can't.
Yeah. And what did you think about the pacing of this movie? Because I was talking to somebody at work today, and I was like, it's kind of a slow burn. But as I've been thinking about it throughout the day, it's not really. I mean, it moves. Like the movie like moves. It has a something that's propelling it forward just from the very beginning. I mean, we see like an establishing shot of a little kid playing outside, and then the mom looking at the kid, and then like bam, the kid's gone. So like, and then it's her like voiceover of him reading her note to him. So he's already like on his way to see her, like within, I don't know, a minute of the movie starting, so I think that it does move quickly, but it spends time, I think, where it needs to spend time. There's certain scenes that they do spend time on in relationships that they spend time on that I think are, like the Cheon character played by Julian Black Antelope. That's a huge part of the middle of the movie, and I think he spends just the right amount of time on that. And as far as Alexander Skarsgård is concerned, yeah, I mean he's awesome, but that's maybe one of the I don't know, that's maybe one of the parts of the movie that I'm kind of wondering if it's how the character was written, or maybe some choices that he made later on in the movie, which we can talk about. He plays the father of the kid who gets killed. So I mean, I guess if you haven't seen the movie, it's on Netflix. It's about a kid who gets killed, and the mother sends out a note to a guy to Jeffrey Wright, who's tracked animals before, and wolves in particular, and he's actually killed wolves that have hurt humans. So that's why she reaches out to him, because there's been like a spate of wolves taking children. This is the third child that has been taken. So he comes to try to help her out. So her husband's in Afghanistan, and he comes back at some point in the movie. So if you haven't seen the movie, it's on Netflix. It's very easy to see. So I think we're gonna start getting into spoilers from now on, just so we can kind of talk about some of the deeper things that are going on in this movie, and maybe kind of like work out what they're trying to say. So did you follow the movie the first time through? Like, have you seen this movie more than once or just once?
It's interesting because when you posed the question, what did I think about the pacing of it? If I had only seen it once, I would have had an immediate answer of purposefully paced films never bother me. Purposefully slow films never bother me, as long as it's purposeful to the narrative. Mm-hmm. And at first, I don't even know how long it took me, maybe 45 minutes before I went, what is going on in this film? Like, what am I supposed to be taking from it? Am I supposed to be understanding why it's so slow-paced? What is happening here? And I saw it, and the first time I saw it, I left unsatisfied. I was like, I'm going to tear this movie apart. And I don't want to, because I understand that these people, of course, we don't tear movies apart, but, like, that was my first reaction. Like, what am I not getting? Is always my question. What am I not understanding that they wanted me to understand? Did they not get it through, or did I not understand it? And because he is who he is to you, Jeremy Saulnier, however you say his last name, because he is who he is to you, I wanted to see it a second time, and I wanted to see if I would feel differently a second time, because you sometimes do. And sometimes you like a movie even more. Sometimes you don't like it as much. Sometimes you see the flaws of it a second time. You see different things that you didn't see before. And in the first 5 minutes, you're absolutely right. I was like, wait, a lot of things have just happened in 5 minutes. You see a kid playing. You see a wolf. You see a mother. You see Jeffrey Wright turning off his Christmas lights. You see so many little minute details in that short period of time. You know that Jeffrey Wright lives by himself. He's turning off all the electricity. Why would he do that if he lived with somebody else? You know he is a solitary person because of all the stuff that's in his house. Who hangs up a whole wall of wolves? I mean, I guess in his man cave, finger quotes, he could do that. But it just struck me as, what is going on here? I'm perplexed by that town. I'm not understanding what that town is all about, that village, if you will. What are those people doing in the middle of nowhere? Why are they always cold? What is going on here? And so I was asking different questions the second time that I saw it. I still have some issues with some parts of the film that I had the first time I saw it, but the second time I saw it, it's interesting to me how not slow it is. Mm-hmm. But the first time I thought it was very purposefully paced, almost to the point where I was starting to like fade in and out of it, where I was losing interest or I was wanting to go pick up my phone, and that never happens to me. Mm-hmm. When I go see a movie, I turn my phone off. Unless I'm on call, unless I'm with my dad, unless there's some reason why I need to leave my phone on, which is traditionally never, but sometimes I do. But I never reach for my phone. I never look at what time it is. I never check my messages ever during a movie. First of all, it's not part of my generation, and it's counterintuitive to why you go to the movies to begin with. But that said, I was sitting here watching it the first time thinking, why am I not following this? Why am I not? I was taking it all in. I was understanding exactly what I was supposed to understand for the narrative, but something seemed so drastically, melodramatically slow that I couldn't get into it. And there were a few scenes that would jar me back in. We're into spoilers. The big shootout scene, the killing of the sheriff deputy and all those people. It's jarring, so it keeps you in tune to it. And then you start to pick up patterns, things like the hot spring and things that they mentioned in the beginning of the film that start to come back. So you start to put those things together. You start to put the jigsaw together. But overall, the first time I saw it, I thought it was almost just indulgently slow. Mm-hmm. And then the second time I saw it, I was like, what was I thinking? Was it the mood I was in? Was I tired? What was it? So it's interesting that watching something a second time really readjusts how it's almost like the first time I saw it, I was watching it through my eyes. Yeah. And the second time I saw it, I was watching it through the filmmaker's eyes.
Yeah. I think they put a lot in the frame, especially in this movie. He puts a lot in the frame, and I think they purposefully, like the script. I read the script today, like front to back. And I mean, I don't think it was really the script. It was just like the closed captioning all put in line. So, because there were no stage directions, there were no like open on, a hill of snow. It wasn't any of that stuff, but it was just somebody like copied all of the closed captioning to a piece or to a document. So that helped me to kind of get through. The first thing it showed me is the efficiency of the writing and the purpose of each of the lines and the reasoning for a lot of these things. A lot of this stuff, pretty much like everything that Riley Keough's character says, Medora, everything that she says like means a lot to like anything that she says. It's like either a clue, whether it's the hot springs or whatever, or things that she's talking about like that, or as far as like how, he kind of asks her like, how do you know? How did you get to know your husband, or where did you meet him? And she's like, we never met. I've just always known him. And all these
I've never
things,
not known him.
Yeah, I've never not known him. So yeah, all of these things that, there, any kind of interaction between the two, like it's all purposeful and there's no kind of like wasted lines there. And I appreciated that, the second time, going through that. But, the other problem with that is that it doesn't give the moviegoer, it doesn't give the audience a chance to like breathe. You've got to like always be on top of it. Like, so if you are really trying to like, stay on top of this movie, like there's no, even though it does seem slow or has like longer scenes, you still are having to be engaged with not only like what each of the characters are saying, but how they're saying it and interacting. There's no fat to that. And I think that's a lot to ask from an audience, and especially nowadays, I guess. And so, they don't shy away from that, for better or worse. I'm guessing people will probably kind of beat this thing up. But at the same time, as we start getting farther in, and especially once we start introducing the Vernon character, Alexander Skarsgård's character, they try to like establish his character as, a ruthless killer, but a killer within the bounds of war, number one. And then the thing that I thought was so great about that scene where he went in on the guy who was raping the Afghani woman, he set his cigarette outside.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, and that's supposed to indicate, I think, just a dispassion and a premeditated, emotionless person. If you saw a woman being raped, you would go as quickly as possible if you had the ability to save her or to prevent that from happening, you do all you could to get that guy off of her. But instead, he's very measured and slow, and you can tell that it's not really necessarily about saving her. It's more about, he's able to kill, to do this kind of like hunting in a established way that nobody's going to get mad at him for, and that he's not going to be judged for or whatever. Now, he did leave the knife for her so that she could, finish the guy off. But at the same time, then he walks out and picks up his cigarette and moves on, and then he gets injured and comes back. But so that, I think, is supposed to show you that, and then the flashback where he's talking to his son, saying, how did that feel? When you shot this, was it I think it was, I don't know, it was a deer or I don't know, something like that. How did it feel? And then, there's that, I guess they're trying to show that bond between them. So we could start getting into the like more supernatural things, I guess, like the wolf spirit things. Is that, did you pick up on that?
Yeah, totally. It's almost impossible not to.
I know, but
you have to be in denial about it people don't want to deal with aspects of film sometimes like that. They don't want to deal with some kind of strange otherworldly thing going on, whether or not it's just in this world or not, or whether or not we know what this otherworldly thing is, especially when it comes to spirits of the earth and all this other stuff that's Native American in origin. It freaks a lot of people out because they don't want to deal with the reality of it if it is a reality. But let me go back to the cigarette thing really quick. What I thought was interesting about that is he put that down like he was just going to go urinate. And it had to be put down, and you knew he was coming back to it because actually the pacing of him putting that down was more purposeful than the pacing of him helping to have that guy killed, basically, or starting that guy to be killed. And so I thought that was interesting that they found a way to show that he's just a matter-of-fact kind of guy, that this killing of this guy needs to happen as matter-of-factly as putting a cigarette down or going to the bathroom. And that's an interesting quality because it's a perplexing character because he seems to have no soul later on because of what Riley Keough says about him. And I believe her when she says that to Jeffrey Wright later on at the end of the film, or at the end of the film, actually. But yet when he sees his dead son's body, he has an emotional reaction to it like any father would have. And that's a great scene. And what he has to say in that scene is great because it adds to the fact that children's spirits are much more interesting than adult spirits. So wherever you're going, remember me. It's a touching scene. But at the same time, he can be disconnected from hurting somebody who's hurting somebody else, but yet he's on the moral high ground because he's helping somebody who's getting hurt by hurting somebody else. So it's an interesting, perplexing character device that they put in with him, especially with that cigarette. There's something very specific about what he's doing at that point. And that's probably in the screenplay. It'd be interesting to read it. It's probably in the book too. Mm-hmm. So I just thought it was interesting how they're going to set this character up to do what's morally correct. It reminds me of the beginning of House of Cards with Kevin Spacey. I do what most people can't do. I do what most people won't do. Mm-hmm. I get the job done. And, if you haven't seen House of Cards, you should see it because the opening sequence it does set out the pace for the rest of the series. Who knows what's going to happen with this last season. I'm sure it's going to be great, but it's going to be interesting without him. But the point is that he does the things that most people won't do because those things have to be done by somebody. Does that make him emotionally void? I don't know. And I think that applies to Alexander Skarsgård too, because he does what should have been done and what everybody says they would do. But would anybody really go in there and stab one of their buddies because they were raping somebody from a foreign country? I don't know.
I mean, I would hope so. I would hope anybody would, but I would hope anybody.
I think people would go in and stop them.
But I think here's the key. I think they would run in and throw him off of that woman and then possibly kill him. But it seemed like he was, it seemed like he was kind of like a wolf, sneaking up on him and hunting that guy. And so
totally.
It didn't seem like he was doing it it didn't seem like he was doing it for her, for the rape victim. It seemed like he was doing it for himself so that he could get the thrill of the hunt and the kill. That's what I got out of it. And then that actually follows through later on in the film. I mean, he kills a bunch of people that he wouldn't technically need to kill, even to get his son's body, and like the guy they got the wolf oil from, the guy that his dad got the wolf oil from, the medicine man, whatever you're gonna call him, who was at that different town. So I mean, he had no reason to kill that guy, but he did because he was in a position where he could, and in fact, that guy in the when he starts putting the mask on, the guy even says like it's good to let the wolf out every once in a while. It was like this thing where he's like kind of goading him into like you haven't worn a mask in a while because he even remembers this guy from in the past. So as a kid, the guy remembers him as a kid. So that part is just, I don't know. There's a lot of this kind of like he's obviously been marked somehow by the people, the native people of his village, and his dad even knew something was wrong with him. He was different. He was troubled, and so his dad went to this place to get this wolf oil to help fix him. And I think that Riley Keough's character is the one. She sees that in their son Bailey, and I think that's why she does what she does. The part that really I'm still struggling with is the end.
Huh? Really? Is that what you thought?
Oh yeah.
See, I took a completely different thing. I don't mean to hover on this, but I just want to go back to something really quick. You said that he was hunting that guy like a wolf. I buy that. And he used the catalyst of him raping somebody to actually murder this guy. Like it wasn't a big deal that the guy was raping her. It was something that was wrong, and he used it as an excuse to kill this guy.
Yeah, so like if somebody was like, "Hey, why'd you kill that guy?" He's like, "He was raping an Afghani woman." He has like an out. Same thing with like the guys in the truck, going ahead of them. I mean, he mowed those guys down because they were firing on his vehicle. I mean, so he has the go ahead to kill those guys because they're engaged in a firefight. They're and he's ruthless in that too. Like the first time we ever see him. So that's, that was my take, because you have those two scenes back to back. You see him in the Humvee, shooting him down, and then you see him right after, taking that guy down who was raping that woman. So, that was my take on that, and the cigarette was the key. If he ran in there and was like, "Hey, don't do that," he didn't do any of that. He just snuck up on him and, took him out.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And okay, so you were saying that you thought that Riley Keough killed her son because she saw the wolf in him.
Yes.
Okay.
And she strangled him. I think that's a key too.
Right, which is foreshadowed when she's lying on the couch with Jeffrey Wright, and she tries to get him to strangle her. Yep. Which is unusual when you're first watching it. You're like, what is this some kind of weird sex thing? What's happening here? Because she is naked and she is a beautiful woman, mm-hmm. and he is a heterosexual male. So I just assumed it was turning into some kind of sex thing, which I guess is wrong to immediately assume that, but that's what I thought.
Well,
and
me too. That's what I thought. But then ultimately,
I thought it was her way of thanking him for showing up.
Like she doesn't have money.
Or the fact that reminded me of Natalie Portman and Cold Mountain, where she wants to just lay in the bed with Jude Law and do nothing, but she just needs to be held by somebody. I thought it was kind of that with mm-hmm. Riley Keough and Jeffrey Wright. I thought that she murdered her son so he didn't fall under the spell of his father. Not that he had that quality, but that his father was not good and possessed by the wolf, if you will, the wolf spirit. And so to get the boy away, the innocence away from him, she took him out.
The only thing that I noticed, he's only in one scene alive. And so the only thing that we see him doing is we see him playing with army men. And there could be multiple reasons why he's playing with army men. But maybe because his dad's in the army and he's overseas. But still, that's kind of what I got out of it. She was trying to break the cycle. Also, I think that the medicine woman in town, or not medicine woman, but the older woman, I guess, in town, who both Jeffrey Wright and Alexander Skarsgård interact with, I believe she said something about him. So, yeah, I don't know.
About the boy? She says something about her, that she says something about Riley Keough, that she has evil in her, that she has the spirit of the wolf in her, she's been bad, whatever. And also the son has a second scene. The son has the scene that you were talking about with the deer.
That's right. Wait, you're right. Yeah, but that's a flashback, I guess.
Yeah.
Only like...
Yeah, see, and it's also like the son still seems innocent to me, obviously, because he's a young child, but he seems to know who Alexander Skarsgård is. So I thought that Riley Keough was trying to protect her son, and And of course they talk about that. Jeffrey Wright talks about that because he sees a pack of wolves
Eating their young. Exactly.
And you do that when it's for the greater good.
Yeah.
Basically, that's in my interpretation. I don't know. It's one of those films this is one of those movies that this is why your first take on a movie doesn't necessarily always mean that's exactly how the film's going to land for the rest of your life. Because I feel completely different now talking about this film than I would have last week if we had a chance to record that podcast when we were supposed to. I would have had problems with this film left and right. Now I'm finding it much more intriguing than I expected it to be. But I knew something about it the first time I watched it, even though I was having some issues with it. I knew there was something. Maybe this is me. Maybe I'm tired. Maybe I'm not being objective. I'm just wanting to be somewhere else. Whatever. I was not giving it my due. So that's why it's always a good thing you don't only listen to a record once or a CD once. You hear it over and over again. And some bands, some of the greatest bands on this planet, it takes like 4 or 5 turns for their new album to even make sense to you because they're trying something new or they're going in a different direction or it's not what you're used to from them. Even if it sounds like them, it's not what you're used to. So, and then all of a sudden, like 6 listens later, you're like, this is the best album ever. That's why I think if you're going to be a professional critic, there should be a requirement that you see something at least twice or listen to something at least 2 or 3 times before you actually write down your opinion, because it's all subjective based on where you're at in your life. So I'm happy that I'm having this reaction to this film after all, but it is a perplexing film that does have issues, especially later on. So
yeah. And I think that the hard part is for me was trying to make sure I understood what everybody's motivations were throughout the film. Like even in the beginning, why does Medora even call that tracker and leave her son for him to find, as opposed to just, skipping town and, burying the body and not telling anybody about it. So I think it's like, she's like kind of putting, things in motion. And she also wanted someone to be able to tell like her story of what is going on, whether it's, what is going on in the village, because we start getting more information about the village. Cheon talks about that with James Badge Dale's character, the detective, I guess, from...
I love that guy.
Yeah, I've seen him in a few... I think the last thing I remember seeing him in was Iron Man 3, but I know he's been in other things. I haven't seen 13 Hours, but he was in that, I guess. And he was in The Departed, too. So, But I have noticed that guy throughout, the last, 10 years or so. But anyway, their kind of interaction where, because Cheon lost a daughter to wolves. I think, I'm assuming that it's legitimately lost a daughter to wolves, and has his whole, life has fallen apart. His wife left him, and the whole thing. She's gone and he has really like nothing to live for other than to, help friend get revenge, whatever you want to call it. But we also learn a little bit more about the town, the village. Like they had only gotten power at that village for, whatever it was, 10 years before or something like that. And when this initial things started happening with the wolves, they kind of like came and went and nobody did anything or said anything. And like, I don't know if that's, I'm guessing there are villages like this in Alaska, and they even talk about, Anchorage not being Alaska. He said like, my daughter's in Anchorage. She wanted to be up here in Alaska. And she's like, that's not Alaska. And then, there was another line that Cheon says where he's like, James Badge Dale's like, hey, the coroner was supposed to, retire in 2 weeks and retire to San Diego. And Cheon's like, San Diego? Never heard of it. So, there's lines where you're just kind of like, yeah, this is, technically the United States. Technically it is, they are in Alaska, but it is its own thing and has its own rules. For better or worse, and whether they want to or not, they're just there, and they've had to learn to live in those conditions. So that to me is also really interesting and makes you wonder if it makes someone like the Medora character either go crazy, if that is that the reason why she's doing what she's doing, or is it that she is possessed by this like wolf spirit or something, or is she trying to get retribution on her husband, for putting her in this position? Those are all valid possibilities, but for some reason, I think because she calls the wolf tracker guy, because she calls Jeffrey Wright, there's a deeper reasoning for her to go through all of this the way that she does. So I'm still noodling through all of that, but and the part that I'm still trying to like understand is the fact that her and Alexander Skarsgård reconcile at the end.
I don't think they reconcile. I think that she knows exactly what's happening, and she knew exactly what was going to occur because of that one line that she says at the end. Let me just sidestep really quick. I think that Riley Keough has lost herself, whether or not that's because the spirit of a wolf has taken over her or she's gone insane. Jeffrey Wright is to bear witness to her sanity after it's left her. And it's, Stockholm syndrome, where you have been tortured and abused and broken so far down that you worship the person who is torturing you after a certain period of time. And I think that's where she's at with him, that she knows that he is evil, at least what she thinks is evil, and it is a wolf spirit that has possessed his body to the natives, and that's probably as true as anything else as an explanation of why people are bad and why people do evil, why people do things that we can't comprehend. I think that her spirit leaves her body, even though she doesn't pass away, Riley Keough, when she does kill her son, because that's the ultimate break from who she is supposed to be and who she's become, because Alexander Skarsgård, who is a sociopath, which is not even a term you could really use, because why would he stop to help somebody getting raped if he was a sociopath?
He wants to kill somebody.
It's perplexing.
He wants to kill anybody and everybody.
And he's using that as a catalyst to murder somebody.
Yeah.
Interesting. I think that Macon Blair is trying to say he's some form of a Robin Hood trying to do something good, even though he does something bad by doing something good. Anyway, it's a perplexing part of the movie, and we're probably going to digress back to that. So forgive us if we've repeated ourselves 1,000 times about that, because it is a perplexing moment in the movie. But I don't know how to verbalize what I think Riley Keough is going through, but I think she knows that he's going to show up at the hot springs at the end. I think she knows he's going to be there. I think she knows that he's going to be okay with what she did, because that's what a pack of wolves do when they need to survive. Mm-hmm. And they needed to survive as two sociopaths, and they couldn't do that with a child, because a child is just innocent and has a heart of gold and doesn't, I guess, unless you're like the Demon Child or whatever that movie is where all those identical blonde-haired, blue-eyed people get possessed, the children. But anyway, so I definitely think that they don't reconcile. I never thought he was going out for revenge against her. I never thought that. I never felt that. And then at the end of the movie, I was like, yeah, I never felt that way. I knew that they were just going to walk away together. Huh. And Jeffrey Wright is there to bear witness to the fact of, you don't understand why I killed my kid. You've looked into his eyes. You now know who he is. Now tell me I was wrong for doing what I did. Because he's got me, he can't have him, is basically what Riley Keough is saying at the end. Now, when you put the spirituality in it, see, we're way removed from that in 2018, what people who walked the earth and lived off the earth thought about it and how things worked for them. It makes sense that things have spirits when you're living in nowhere, Alaska, because that's an explanation for something that you can't explain. That's an explanation for freezing weather that you can't control, and it knocks out all the power. And next thing you know, you're frostbitten and you're got to remove your toes. You can't psychologically take all that stuff in. So in order to understand it, you put it. Now, this is a modern take on what I'm watching in this movie, but there are people who actually believe those things are true. And I think the question of the movie is not whether or not he's a sociopath, not whether or not he is reconciling, not whether or not he's after Riley Keough, is whether or not we believe that these spirits really exist inside human beings. And at the end of the movie, I believe it. I believe he is not human, that he is taken over by, and there's a term they use for it, he's taken over by the wolf spirit, or he is the wolf spirit. And I think that's what his father sees in him when he's a kid, and he takes him to that miner, or whatever that guy is, that
medicine man,
witch doctor, if you will. Medicine man, witch doctor. It's Halloween. Let's use witch doctor. Living in that mining entrance. What a strange place to live at. I'm semi interested and envious. At the same time, I don't have a thing to do with it because I'm just a modern kind of guy. I need electricity and power and cable. I just do. But I think the question is, there are things in heaven and earth that are not dreamt of in our philosophy, Horatio. He says it in Hamlet. Hamlet says that. There are things that we can't possibly understand that are working through us, in us, around us. And, you can get all metaphysical and be like, do, and be like, oh, it's so weird. But why do people do what they do? Is it just a chemical thing? Is it just a psychological thing? Is it that Alexander Skarsgård was scarred, say that 1,000 times, when he was a child? But apparently he wasn't. He just is that natured. So I think to the modern day audience, it's perplexing because they're not going to understand it. I think if you take this to people who have believed the same thing for hundreds of years, I don't care if it's Native Americans, if it's Hasidic Jews in New York. I don't care if it's a small country town in Savannah, Georgia. I don't care what it is. As long as you have these core beliefs, or voodoo in Haiti and all of this stuff that happens in the bayou and all these weird things that happen. I mean, people buy into that. And a lot of that, quote unquote, black magic, not to associate everything I just talked about with black magic, but to end with that, is that most of that stuff needs to be believed in order for it to be real. So what is real? I think that's what this movie is posing. I have no idea what I just said. I hope that made sense.
No, I think it did. I think it did. And I was looking back on, like, the only thing that would really inform the relationship between the dad and the son is that one interaction between them after they hunt that deer together. And I looked it up here on this script thing, and it's and I'm just gonna read it real quick. The father asks, "How'd that feel?" The kid says, "It felt real good." "What?" And the kid says, "You killed a person before." "Who told you that?" "Mama." "My teacher said it's bad to kill people." Yeah, you'll hear that a lot. "So it's good if you have to." "Why?" "To protect what you love and what you need." And then at the very end of it, he says, "When I go away, I'll always be with you." And the kid says, "Don't lie." And it's like, that right there, I don't know, that "don't lie" line is it is perplexing. It gives the kid like he has a more advanced sense of what his dad's going to and what's going to be happening and the chances of his dad coming back and all of those things. So you can either read into that and say that, like, he's more advanced, mentally, and maybe, in the control of a wolf spirit or what. But the more we talk about it, the more that I kind of like your take on it, where the mom, what's her name? Medora, she is trying to protect the child from the dad and what either of them could do to the kid by killing him. I mean, it's a violent way. I mean, geez, strangling your own child. That's horrible.
It's what happens in the beginning of Beloved. You ever seen that movie with Oprah Winfrey?
No.
Yeah, that's she murders her two, or tries to murder her two children to keep them away from the slave traders.
Oh, geez.
And she kills one of them, and one of them lives, and the one that dies comes back as an adult spirit. Tandy Newton, as a matter of fact.
Oh, wow.
In the first thing I ever saw. Yeah, it's a strange movie. Jonathan Demme, Oprah Winfrey, Danny Glover. It's a strange movie, but there is a historical precedence for parents killing their children to keep them, Sophie's Choice, to protect them. To protect them.
Yeah.
You sacrifice one to save the other. It's a horrific thing to think about. And actually, I want to go back to what that son says. He says, don't lie. He's not saying to him that you are always going to, he says, I'm always going to be with you. And he says, don't lie, because he knows that when Alexander Skarsgård leaves, his mind flips into something other than always having his son in his heart. Because if you always had your kid in your heart, would you stab somebody in the arm who's raping somebody like you're stalking them and hunting them? No. Would you just kill two sheriff deputies or whoever they are at that point? One's a deputy, obviously, because he's the Barney Fife of the group. Would you just shoot them to take your son's dead body away from them? No. If you had your son in your heart, you wouldn't do that kind of stuff. So the son is advanced when it comes to understanding the instinct of his father, which actually bodes well for my discussion about that's why she got him away from him.
Yeah. And it makes me wonder if he's actually afraid of his dad too, like afraid of what his dad might do to him or what,
No, I think the opposite is true. I think he sees through his father and he's not afraid of his dad. That's what makes Riley Keough afraid of him. Afraid for him.
Okay.
Because the son sees the spirit. If that's what we're talking about, if it's an actual thing, the son sees the spirit. And I think that the son sees the spirit of the wolf in the beginning of the film, and that's not really I think that wolf in the beginning represents something that we haven't looked at, because we're thinking that wolf came and killed that kid. But that wolf didn't come and kill that kid, because we find out later on that the mother kills the kid, chokes him. So I think that wolf represents Alexander Skarsgård at war. That's why he's playing with the army man.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So would you say, I mean, I'm just now trying to figure out the title, and I think that the title is kind of like, is that Riley Keough's character trying to hold at bay the darkness that is her husband? Yes. So that's how she does that. So, because the whole time, like the first time I watched this movie, I was just like, okay, I got to figure out the whole hold the dark thing. And I'm just now, it's now sinking into me. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot. I mean, I think it's a lot to ask of an audience, but, it makes for good conversation. So that's good. We did talk about very quickly. We talked about the kind of like scene between James Badge Dale and Julian Black Antelope as Cheon, and that whole like back and forth between was great. Thought that was awesome. Even the kind of firefight between there are some actiony sequences, and they do kind of punctuate the kind of vastness of the rest of the movie. But I thought that was great.
Let me interject this. When I first saw this film, I thought to myself, this must be what Josh, or how Josh feels about Wind River and Hell or High Water. He knows that it's something interesting because everybody else is talking about it, but yet it's not connecting to him. It's not connecting. He sees the flaws over the positive. When I fell in love with Hell or High Water, you're like, yeah, I got a problem with this, I got a problem with this, I got a problem with this. So I felt like the first time I saw this movie, Hold the Dark, I was feeling like what you must have felt like when you watched Hell or High Water.
Okay.
Yeah, interesting, but I'm not getting it. I'm not getting what I'm, but unlike you,
yeah, I know.
I am able to go back and watch it a second time and see what is it that we bring to a movie? And we've talked about this before. We are as important as any part of this process because we are the audience. We are the ones who watch the film. What we take from it is as important to what somebody wanted to show us. And depending on where you're at in your world, you can have a different reaction to it. So it's fascinating to me to watch it a second time and go, oh, wait, I was listening to it through my ears, not through Macon Blair's ears, or not through Jeremy Saulnier's ears, or not through Alexander Skarsgård's ears, or their psyche, or whatever you want to call it. I was not watching it for what was being presented. I was watching for what I was expecting. Or I guess that's not I'm not expecting, but I don't know. I was assuming something that wasn't there. But on a second watch, you see these complex characters etched out, and you see these important things, and you're like, why did that happen? Oh, that connects to that, and that connects to that. I do want to bring up a couple of things that I thought were interesting, but do not work at all. I think that this director in particular has a appetite for violence as art. And even though that might be an oxymoron, he has a way of staging horrific scenes that are really beautiful to look at, even though they're horrible to look at the same time. A lot of the stuff that he does in Green Room, it's devastating.
Body stuff.
It's crazy what he does. Yeah, the body stuff is crazy. A lot of the violence in this particular project, Hold the Dark, felt to me not gratuitous. It had to be there, but it felt like he was striving for something he never achieved. The big battle sequence goes on long, way too long. It goes on way too long. There's an illogical quality to it that I have never been in a gunfight. I've never had a machine gun. What do they call those machine guns where the bullets just go through like that? Is it just a machine gun?
I mean, yeah, it's an automatic machine. It could be an M60, but I don't know. That would be the military issue version of it.
I've never been in a gun battle, so I don't know. But there was something purposefully over the top that I don't think works with a lot of the violence in this film. I'll give you an example of something that worked, and we're going back to it. When he stabs that guy during the rape sequence, where he stabs him is as important to how violent he stabs him. It has a purpose to it. Obviously, he's stabbing him there. That kind of what's the word I'm looking for? It incapacitates him, so he can't really move. So the woman can take her final revenge. So obviously there was a purpose to it. There's a purpose to how he gets shot in the neck. There's a purpose to how he shoots those 2 guys or 3 guys in the beginning of the film. There's a purpose to a lot of the violence. The gunfight at the OK Corral it's just too epic. It's almost like because they could, they did. Oh, we've got these squibs and we've got this glass that breaks. We've got this and blah, 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 blah. I'm not saying they thought that. I'm saying that it's so right on the edge of indulgent to the point where it teeters over into unnecessary for me. It just does. And the other thing that's interesting is that when he shows violence, it's done in a way when he first shoots that deputy in the beginning of the film, the Barney Fife character, for lack of a better term. The way he shoots him and the way that he clips away from it, the way that Jeremy Saulnier clips away from it, you never really see anything. You know that he's getting shot in the side of the head, but you never really see it. So then when it flips to the gunfight at the OK Corral and you start seeing all that stuff, it just teeters on the line of not important for me.
I agree with you. I think that the OK Corral scene was a bit over long. But at the same time, I think that you're right. He does have like a body horror type thing where he, as far as like the scene at the beginning where he he's purposely stabbing this other guy, so that he bleeds out slowly, but he can't move. You're right. It's like what you would, if you're hunting a deer, you don't want to shoot them so they bleed out slowly. You want to shoot them so they bleed out as fast as possible. But at the same time, you're going to be doing that so that they're going to be incapacitated. They can't go anywhere. So there's that. But then you're right. There's certain scenes where they're like overly gory. The one of the big ones was when he stabs Macon Blair in the head. And you just kind of get kind of feeling of like, ooh, this is what it makes me feel like. Is it makes me feel like this is actually what it would look like if I saw someone get stabbed in the head. Like that's the feeling you get, which is really creepy because when you see Day of the Dead, right? Or Dawn of the Dead, the George Romero, the one in color, and they're all in the mall, and then at the end, like you just got people getting eviscerated, and it's like, I mean, the guts look fake, and it all just looks a little cheesy, but it's fun, but it doesn't look real. And the effects in Green Room, the effects in this movie, especially like when it's, a person getting hurt or mangled or, whatever, those things look so super real that I'm just like, that really creeps me out. And that's a lot scarier than, seeing somebody get cut in half by a sheet of glass in The Omen, for example. Like, I don't have a reference.
Oh, I love that scene.
I know it's a great scene, but I don't have a reference for that. But like, I totally know that people have been stabbed in the head. Like somewhere on this earth, someone's been stabbed in the head, and it probably looked a lot like what happened in this movie, and that creeps me out a bunch.
But the question is, how does it serve the narrative? Why? What does it do to serve the narrative? What do we need to see that to understand what level? And I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm not saying, I agree with you. There is an art form to how he does things when it comes to violence. And that's a strange statement to make, but that is the truth for me. It's strange, right?
It is.
To say something is violent but beautiful. I guess there's beauty in everything. It just depends on how you look at it. But what is the purpose to realizing that's how somebody would look if they got stabbed in the head? What does that serve? How does it serve the story? I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm saying that I can't connect those dots. I don't understand why he went uber real in certain parts and then a little less. I mean, I guess the violence builds up to a degree over the course of the movie, but why does seeing Macon Blair get stabbed in the head, what purpose does that serve? Does it say that Alexander Skarsgård's character will go to any means necessary to get what he needs to get, which is not revenge? And
he's punishing Macon Blair for calling the cops on him. I mean, he just was on the phone with the cops telling them exactly where he was. I mean, he snitched on Alexander Skarsgård. So, I mean, if anybody's
okay, so then why not pull out a gun and shoot him? Why not pull out a knife and cut his throat? This was just a new and different way to kill somebody, and it was more interesting than what we've already seen. I don't have a problem with any of that. Don't get my question. I'm not being cynical or sarcastic. I'm just trying to understand. To me, it seemed like a cool thing to do versus a purposeful thing to do.
Yeah.
It was delicate to look at. Like, it's just not right to see that, especially in HD. It's horrifying. But I just don't see the purpose. I don't see why you need that violent of a death for that character who is technically insignificant to the plot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that the whole thing could have happened without that character.
Yeah.
So it's just a posing of a question. I'm not saying there's an answer to it. I'm not saying that I have the answers to it. I'm just saying, for me, instinctually, when I saw it, I'm trying to think what I thought the second time I saw it. I think I kind of looked away knowing it was happening, maybe. So, I mean, I guess that's a reaction. I'm just curious, like, why go to that extreme? There has to be a justification for it because all of these things are well thought out. They just didn't do it because it was cool.
Yeah, I have a similar question about the James Badgedale character. What his character was supposed to represent, because we purposefully get introduced to his wife who's pregnant, and then we watch him get killed by Alexander Skarsgård. So, I mean, first of all, you really want him to make it out of all this, but you kind of know something's going to probably happen to him, especially nowadays. It seems like that was a more cliched choice in this movie where it's like, hey, look, here's the guy who's about to have his first child and now he's going to get killed. So, I mean, I don't know if that's supposed to help the main character, help Jeffrey Wright's character, like, appreciate his life more and want to, reconnect with his daughter even more than he already does. I don't know. I'm not sure what that character's purpose was, other than to just kind of like, be something for Jeffrey Wright to bounce off of.
I think it shows normalcy. I think it shows what a well-adjusted human being is having to put up with or having to deal with in this world, that we're surrounded by people who are evil and sociopaths and people who kill their own kids and all that other stuff. You needed to see a juxtapose. You need to see a mother who was still in the throes of loving her child, even though the child hadn't come to be yet. And that life goes on, and that people are happy, and that there is a happy existence in this world for some people. And I think that they're just talking about the nature of people. I think there's, Alexander Skarsgård's character has an evil nature, and Riley Keough's character succumbs to that evil nature. Jeffrey Wright is falling somewhere in between. I don't say he's necessarily an evil character, but he has lost his way. And I think you're right. I think it is, I didn't think about it at the time, but I think you're right that it does show Jeffrey Wright, hey, I better appreciate, because they mentioned that a couple of times. They ask him, she asked him, do you have a kid? And then they bring it up again. I thought that was a strange thread until the ending. And then I thought it was kind of tacked on there as a semi-happy ending, which I'm having a little bit of problem with these movies having to tack these things on. And it probably happened in the book, and it probably makes sense if I look at it in a different light. But it does seem like we as Americans cannot handle the fact that he will never reconcile with his daughter. Somebody killed their kid. A father was killed. We can't deal with that in this country. Now, granted, I don't know the book. It could be in the book, okay? But actually, whenever I read a book compared to a movie, and usually those things are drastically different, and we change them to fit, without giving anything away. I don't know if you finished watching Maniac. It has this same kind of thing going on where it's like, oh, okay, well, that was an interesting choice, but I'm not sure that choice is the same genetic code as the choices they were making up to that choice. And I don't think the choice of Jeffrey Wright in the hospital and his daughter walking in is the same genetic code that the rest of the film is coming from. It seems like they spliced two people's DNAs together at the very end. And that's fine. That could be what, the filmmaker wants you to take, that there is good in this world. You need to love it while it's around you and not take it for granted. That could be ultimately what it's about. But it just seemed different than what I was expecting and how I was expecting the film to end. That said, you and I are both lovers of some movies that don't necessarily have the best endings in the world. So we've kind of, come accustomed to that. And we kind of have a thicker skin when it comes to things like that. And when they make those choices, you go, oh, did they make that choice because it's the right choice for the narrative? Or did they make that choice because they didn't want to leave us on such a bleak ending? Who knows? I don't know. And now I'm probably going to have to read this book because I would like to know the differences. So this film is one of those movies that I have a feeling that in 10 years, I'm going to stumble upon it again, and I'm going to put it in, and I'm just going to think it's the most brilliant thing ever. But I'm scrapping with it right now. I am fighting with the choices that were presented to me and what I need to know from those choices. Once again, we often talk about on this podcast that we are not critics. We are trying to understand what the filmmaker was showing to us. We have questions, and sometimes our questions can't be answered, and that could be because of the fault of the movie or the storyteller. But it's just a question. And I have so many questions about this film that it ended up not being a fully satisfying experience at the end. That said, there's so much great stuff in here. There's so much to unpack. There's so much to look into. There's so much to understand. I mean, I don't know. Maybe if I looked into the legend of wolves in Native American culture, maybe I'll understand things differently than I would have before this film. I do want to put that in. I do want to put this in, though. That shouldn't be a reason why I didn't instinctually understand it on a visceral or emotional level. I shouldn't have to be educated on some folklore to get what the film's getting. That said, we've talked about this before too. I didn't understand art until I took an art history class, and now I understand so much more about it because it's been explained to me. So,
well, but look at Whiplash. Look at what Whiplash did. You don't have to know anything about being in a jazz band or jazz drumming,
true,
and you still get that movie. But people who have been in jazz bands or have done some jazz drumming may get more out of that movie.
Birdman. You've never been in a play. You've never seen the back of a stage, but you understood emotionally where it was coming from. I, on the other hand, have been in plays and seen the backstage of a play, so I understand a different part of it, but it still has that same feeling. So yeah, I'd be interested to see what Jeremy Saulnier says about this film 10 years from now too. Is this going to be the film that just grows and becomes more perplexing and complex in its nature and answers its own questions eventually? Or is it going to be the one that he goes, it's the one that got away. I wish I had done this. I wish I had done that. It feels a little like the latter. It just does. But I'm having a hard time leaving it on a bad note, though.
No. I mean, it's the same for me. I mean, if I'm going to put in a Jeremy Saulnier movie, it's probably not going to be Hold the Dark. But that's, once again, it's one of those things where, David Fincher, for example. I mean, there's movies that I've gone back to and I love even more. There's movies that I haven't revisited as much recently, and movies that I have, for David Fincher, and movies have kind of gone up and down for me, as far as like which ones are my favorite, and so, hopefully, Saulnier will be making more and more and more movies, and I'll have that same problem where I'll have to be like, oh wow, this one's better than this one now, and it it probably has a lot to do with maybe somebody who has kids will feel differently about it, and so you never know, but yeah, I'm excited to see what he's going to do next. I mean, shoot, this is a great year, I think, because I saw a Jeremy Saulnier movie recently. Last night I saw a Damien Chazelle movie. So, it's pretty awesome. It's a pretty good year so far. So, okay. You can check us out on the web at actorandengineer.com. You can go to facebook.com/actorandengineer, and you can tweet us at actorengineer. And we'll see you next time.